G'day everybody, welcome back to the channel. Okay, so this is a little intro to talk to you a little bit about an interview that I did with Theo Stack and Josh Stephenson from Stack Audio. So we did a Zoom chat from here to the UK, and it's a pretty interesting interview. I talked to them about certain things that are going on with their company. And we spoke about their speaker isolation and their component isolation, and that it was a pretty interesting interview. So I'm going to break it up into two parts because there was quite a bit of material. We got talking about quite a lot of things, and so I hope you enjoy it. But this will be part one of the Stack Audio interview. So enjoy, and we'll talk soon. Okay, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Here today I've got Theo Stack and Josh Stephenson, great last name, from Stack Audio, and we're going to ask them some questions, and we're going to learn a little bit about these guys and about their products and about, you know, all the things that they've got to offer for us. So I'll kick off with the first question, which was, Theo, can you tell me a little bit about your engineering background and how you came to be the designer at Stack Audio?
Sure. So I didn't go down a traditional route with university. I've always been fascinated with how things work from a very young age. I remember just taking computers apart and things like that at like 13, 14, and I've always been mechanically minded. So from a young age, I knew that some form of mechanical engineering was the route I wanted to take. And then I can't remember how, but like 15, 16, I started building kind of media PCs. So I don't know if you remember Windows Media Center. So I got into that and designing cases and making those products. And that was kind of my introduction to hi-fi, because computer audio, the use of linear power supplies, sound cards, that kind of stuff. So that was my initial introduction to it. And then basically, I just got obsessed with it and just learned it. And I was fortunate enough to meet some really knowledgeable people who I learned a lot from. So it's all really been self-taught. And sometimes I think that's a good way, because I'm just very passionate about it, in the sense that right, if I went to uni, it would have been quite a regimented process, whereas I've had the luxury to kind of learn and enjoy it in my own kind of way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. I must admit, my background in sound engineering just started because of a total love of music, and
yes,
and essentially, you know, I was building hi-fi cabinets for a high-end audio place here in Geelong, and just admiring all this music with this, you know, absolute wide open eyes, and I just fell in love with really good sound, and that
yes,
was organic evolution into that. So I absolutely understand where you're coming from. I think it is, it concentrates you to want to strive to get good at something, because the motivation's in the love of it.
yes, yeah. And I think for me, like, I've always loved music, but I didn't really realize I wanted to go into the music industry as such, or audio engineering industry. But as soon as I kind of came across it, I got obsessed with it, loved it. And just, yeah, the fact that you can create something that manipulates or adjusts how the sound sounds and improves it is, yeah, it's something I'm passionate about.
Well, there's no doubt about it. I have first-hand experience about just how much something that is considered, which you may be able to see behind you there,
Yes,
those big heavy monsters there, what your footers have actually been able to do to unravel something that they now produce that I did not believe was possible.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Now, that probably segues me into reaching over for my phone and asking a question that Drago, one of my subscribers, has asked me, and he wanted to know. He said, "Could I ask you, Theo, and Josh, for that matter, both of you, what your current playback audio system is, including any mods that you've done that are not necessarily from your company?" And well, I guess
sure.
we'll start with you, Theo.
Yeah, so we predominantly do all our listening and testing on a friend system. because he has some really nice Kudos Titan 808s, I think, and a really nice Copeland amp system. And he's done some proper room treatment. So we've had the luxury to do proper product development on a proper system. Whereas where we are now, it never had the right room, so the right room acoustics. So we just had, or have, some Daddy Minuets and some Hypex kind of DIY amplifiers. So it is more a music system to listen to when I'm making stuff or just general business stuff. So yeah, and at home, I have a very similar system. It's the Daddy Minuets, because again, it's a very small room with it's a Cambridge Evo, I think, 150 amplifier. So it's not particularly high end, but I think nice thing about it, having the luxury of a friend who has a really high end system, is it's meant that we haven't had to invest super significantly into that. But we are in the process of moving units, and we've got a plan to build a proper kind of listening room, which I'm really excited about, because I want to get my teeth into that and build a proper system.
Yeah, awesome. What about you? Tell us all about your system, Josh.
So mine's pretty basic as well. I live in quite a small rented house, so the room acoustics aren't ideal. Luckily, my brother's also a sound engineer, so he helps maneuver the room a bit to help. But I just have Kess LS50 wireless 2 speakers, which are fed by Tidal Connect, and I use Alpha 50s underneath them, which I'm hoping to scale up as I move properties and we get a bit more free cash, because a lot of our cash at the moment is tied up in investing into the business and hoping to scale up as we get more and more customers. So yeah, I'm hoping to get a better system quite soon.
Well, I hope I can help and do my little bit to help that happen as well, because I very much am sold on these products, and as I said, I've just turned 53 years old. I've been dabbling around doing this since I was a teenager, and I have not. And let's be honest here. I mean, and I think most of my subscribers and my viewers would agree that a footer is a tweak in your system.
Yes.
It's the sort of thing you would do when you've basically got, your system in place, more or less. But these should not necessarily be, as far as I'm concerned, not necessarily be considered as that, because they make such a huge difference. I mean, it really does make what would be probably a fairly sorted out mid-fi system into something quite special, especially if you've got a suspended timber floor and you've got issues with some room modes. And certainly I'm talking about speaker isolation here now. I mean, and that also ties into component isolation, because you'll be affecting all of those very sensitive components with whatever vibration and harmonics you're creating in the room. And I think that's what I've noticed with my system. When I thought, and I think I said this in the video, when I thought I didn't think I could get it any better than I got it, and then I stuck some of these things underneath, and I went, wow. I was a bit speechless. I really didn't know what to say. So I congratulate the two of you, and certainly Theo, your work here in relation to particle impact dampening technology is I think really where the rubber hits the road in isolation. Right. So next question, and I think we might as well kick into the other question that Drago asked me was offering component mods for the Lin LP12 turntable. Talk to me a little bit about that, because that is or has been on your website, and people certainly know about that. They see it on the website. So could you shed a bit of light into that area?
Yeah, of course. I mean, so we started that I don't know, maybe 6-7 years ago, and I had an LP12, and I just thought, why not tweak it, improve it, and then it became into a product range which consistently evolved. And yeah, it was a big part of our business for quite some time. But we're moving away from the LP12 parts, and another company might take it over. But essentially, yeah, it's kind of come to its natural end. And I think the reason for that was because the LP12 itself, or LP12, the sound of the LP12, I think the vibrations that it added kind of made the character of the LP12, which is not always necessarily typical of most turntables. Most turntables, you want the most accurate reproduction possible. And we've measured LP12s, and the vibration on it is often excessive compared to kind of traditional turntables. And our upgrades were consistently trying to remove vibrations, and it was an opposite direction to the LP12. Like when we did listening and sent parts to other customers, we kind of felt like we had to stop removing vibrations as such, because it took the character of the LP12 out, really. So so it just, as a business, we wanted to continue to evolve, produce something that consistently removed vibration as much as possible, and it just wasn't the right product fit for us, and that's why we moved into equipment isolators and speaker isolators. So it was an interesting time, but and the other element of it is it's not the most, because we predominantly sell direct to end users, because Josh enjoyed the experience, we enjoyed the experience of speaking to customers, and also it just means we can provide a better value for money product. And the LP12 upgrades, it's not really fits into that kind of, it doesn't really fit into that model. So that's kind of why we've moved away from it.
Well, that's great, and I guess it's good for my my audience to know that that's the part of your business that you've literally taken as far as you can take it, and then it's time to either possibly give that to someone else to continue on with, and you're concentrating on the things that I believe make all the difference in the world to your system. So that's a good question for people to know the answer to. All right. Talk to me about your involvement, Josh, in the company and how that all came to be.
So I've known Theo since I was about 5. We went to primary school together, followed through to secondary school, and then went to college/sixth form together. I went on to study a cybersecurity degree. Theo started this engineering course and IT, etc., etc. So I moved away, did a few other jobs, and Theo reached out to me to ask if I'd like to have any part-time work doing general admin duties. But I quickly discovered that I really enjoy speaking to customers, and I tried to train myself in a bit of marketing, etc. So at this point in time, I just really enjoy what I'm doing, communicating with customers, communicating to people such as yourself, and I'm hoping to kind of scale with Theo, and we both plan to invest and bring the company to as high level as possible, really.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, I mean, your input as far as the front man here at Stack Audio is exemplary, I have to say, and I definitely send people your way and say to them when they come and comment to me or message me on my phone, sort of friends of mine, I just say, go and speak to Josh, because that man will look after you. He's can't do enough to help you out, and that's a really important part of, I think, Stack Audio is the person in front of the of the show, and absolutely you are kicking all the goals in the world there, mate. I can tell you that for a fact.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Now, how long has Stack Audio been around for?
I had to work it out. So officially around 2015, 16. But I was working on it part-time. So the first kind of product, the first Stack Audio product was something called the Onset. So it was a network transport that was designed to be used with DACs like DCS and Esoteric. So it had kind of dual AES and I2S out, etc., etc. But that product was kind of the introduction where I got to understand vibration, because it was in a solid kind of monocoque machined enclosure, which had a lot of mass and helped remove the vibration. So that's kind of where the interest in vibration essentially started. But that product didn't properly go to market because we used this Swiss-made chipset, and it was just at the point where Rune was coming out as well. So it didn't support Rune. So it was bad timing, and to redesign it all would have just basically bankrupted me. So I had to move on. So basically that's where it started. And then we went on to LP12 upgrades, and then we introduced a product called the Link, which was, again, a network transport. it was more kind of a general network transport with USB out. And that did well and enjoyed making it. So that was electronics. We did linear power supplies as well. And then finally, we moved to the upgrades or the equipment isolators at this present time.
Yeah, great. Well, I mean, you sent me a link, and I had a look at the chassis on that
Yes.
machine. Is very, very impressive indeed.
Thank you. Yeah, it was an interesting job.
No, and I did look at Darko's review and had a read of that because he obviously had a look at that too, and yeah, that looked very, very impressive indeed. So I just keep putting my glasses back on here because I need them to read. Theo, when did you know that you were onto something with the speaker isolation, and how many prototypes did it take for you to come up with that final product that you took to market?
Sure. So I reckon it was probably around 7 to 8 prototypes.
Wow.
And the initial one, we knew we had something because we just, again, put them under the Kudos speakers, and it was a really, really obvious and clear difference. And I personally was surprised. I mean, I was expecting to hear something, but not to the magnitude that we heard. So at that point, we knew we had something, and it was just about evolving it and getting a better understanding of it and continuous tweaks. Because I'd say after the 4th prototype, you know, the differences were very incremental, but the additional kind of differences added up. So yeah, it was an interesting experience and a fun one at the same time.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, certainly. I mean, I know that what I've got here is that final product to market, but I imagine that if that principle was in place that you believe in, and that you started on that platform, then you would have heard you would have gone, oh wow, there's really
it was. We're both very surprised.
Yeah. I can see the smile on Josh's face too. Looks like he definitely heard something at the same time. I mean, as I said, I filmed that first thing. I didn't know how that was going to go, to be honest, because it literally was the very first time. I don't muck around. If I say I'm going to do something as a reaction video, it's not staged. I just don't work like that. I literally set the camera up and I'll press play after I'd got all those under the. I was sweating too because I was it's a bit of work, and then I was like, oh my god, like that track I played, which is a beautiful Blue Note recording. That, my god, I'll never forget that video. I'm so glad I shot it, because what you were seeing on my face was just this almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was just, I've never heard that track sound so alive. It really sounded like it was, I was in the audience. It was that good.
We really enjoyed the video. We watched it quite a few times here in the office.
Yeah, look, sometimes I do crazy things and come up with crazy ideas, but that was just one of those ones where I thought, what would I want to see? Well, I'd want to see something like that, I guess, if I was watching my channel. And move on to our next question, which is, could you tell me a little bit more about the component isolation and the processes that went into making that a reality?
Sure, absolutely. So the equipment isolators, they're obviously different to the speaker isolators, because with speakers, you want absolute rigidity in an ideal world. And the Alva is a hybrid between compliance and the particle impact dampening technology. Whereas, like I said, with speakers, you want absolute rigidity, otherwise it can mess with stereo imaging, etc., etc. But compliance is the most traditional and often the most effective way at absorbing vibration. So we wanted to couple the two because they both do slightly different things and work on slightly different frequencies. And I felt that like merging those two could work really well. So it was a big learning curve because I've never really worked in silicon before. So that element to it was a big kind of learning curve, like different types of materials, different types of shapes, etc., etc. So that was a big part of the Alva EQ development. But that was a similar thing. I built a crude prototype, and the difference was actually really surprising. I was always surprised by how much of a difference good isolation can make to equipment. It's surprising, but that's essentially how it all started, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, same thing applies. I've got a pretty expensive DAC and a pretty expensive transfer here, and with all of the technology that goes into Andreas Crotch's designs here, to have those component isolations do what they did to that was another one of those wow moments. It was like the speakers, and I did the speakers almost around the wrong way. Although these came first to me for review, and so when I got them under there, I sort of went, hang on a minute, and I pulled them out again, and I sat back and I went, no, that's not right, and I put them back up again, and I went, oh my God. Like again, it was one of those things where I've tried everything from, pretty much everything I've tried before your products. So I'm probably in a really good position by virtue of my experience in the past. I always knew this was a very important thing that was often overlooked in people's audio systems. It's something they really should be considering, because you can't unhear this stuff once you've heard it.
Right.
It just brings everything into focus. It literally makes everything sound real, and more so. I mean, as I said, you can make a mid-fi system sound like a proper hi-fi system if you get that isolation and both component and speaker isolation sorted out.
100%. Yeah, and I mean the playback design and mechanical engineering on those products is gorgeous. I think often electronics engineers just obviously focus so heavily on the electronics, and vibration is often overlooked. Obviously in turntables it's a bit different, that's their main focus, but with electronics, I think it's often an overlooked area that could be improved.
Well, I mean, I think people just think, well, I've got a solid state piece of equipment. What can happen to it? I could probably, hit it with a hammer and nothing's going to happen to it. But we're talking about oven baked clocks and things that are in these components that are so sensitive to vibration and harmonics that and people I think they have this mindset that it's a solid state piece of equipment, or even if it's a valve piece of equipment, it's like, okay, well, look, it's wires and it's valves and it's circuits and it's resistors and it's, it's all these other bits and pieces that really are impervious to that, but they're not. If you isolate things like that, you just clean everything up. I mean, as I think I said it in the last video, for God's sake, just try these things. Go and or find somebody that's got them. Do the in and out thing. That's all you got to do. And once you do that, you'll be ordering them. You'll be bothering Josh, and he'll have to send it out to you. Because I mean, honestly, this is what I'm talking about. I'm still dumbfounded. I spent too long in this bloody room listening to my products again, thanks to you two.
Very glad you enjoyed them.
No, it's great. As I said, I'm an absolute convert. I trust my ears, and when my ears tell me something that's, well, look, in this instance, you made my job as a reviewer extremely easy, because I mean, this am I hearing something here? I'm not sure. Yeah. It was well, as I said, the video said it all for the speakers, and yeah, absolutely. I was dumbfounded, still am. So next question: are you working on any updates or to take your products any further? I guess what I'm asking is, are you continually evolving, finding new materials that work more efficiently, higher damping factor materials, such like that?
Yeah, so at the moment, what we're working on is computer models. So basically models to emulate the particles absorbing vibration, because once we have that, it is basically the baseline for further development, because at the moment you have to get accelerometers out. It's a long testing process, calibrate machines, etc. Whereas if we have a model, it's not particularly exciting, it's a bit boring, but our main focus engineering wise at the moment has been creating models so we can kind of emulate the particle interactions to better assess how it absorbs vibration, or which shapes absorb better vibration. So yes, in kind of.
Yeah, well, I guess that's really where the rubber hits the road from an engineering / production point of view.
Yes.
You've really got to try and cut the costs that are involved in the R&D down as best you can, so that you can obviously be more efficient, create new models, make in the sense
Absolutely.
of running programs. It's just a much more efficient way to operate and to evolve, I would imagine.
Definitely, and it allows us to see how everything's interacting as well, because measurements are great, but if you can see it, then it helps with the product development. So there'll always have to be both computer modeling and measuring to kind of make sure that the model works correctly. But yeah, it's getting there. It's actually pretty complicated. I mean, it's heavily math based, so it's not myself who's doing the modeling, but yeah, I hopefully it should be a really useful tool to allow us to kind of further develop products. And the other reason we're doing it is if we work with some speaker manufacturers which we're in discussion with, we can tune it specifically to the cabinet frequency or resonance frequency of the cabinet. So that's the other kind of reason for doing it.
Brilliant.
But we are working on another product which we're not quite sure if it's going to see light, and that's a record clamp / vibration absorber, and we have been prototyping it, but I think it's important for us to create a product that makes a meaningful difference, and at this current point in time we're still not happy with it. So we've got some ideas, but it's quite hard to kind of do, because with a turntable or with a record clamp, it's on the top of the record, obviously, whereas with speaker feet and equipment isolators, you have a degree of control of the channel of vibration. It goes up through the system, whereas with a record puck, it sits on top, and you're dealing with very kind of low amplitude vibrations. So there's not a lot of energy there, so it's quite complicated to do it properly. And we want to do something more than just adding weight with some compliant solution underneath it to act as a mass dampener. So that's something we're working on, and that might be the next project or product we launch, but we're still very much in the early stages of that.
Brilliant. Well, that sounds exciting. I mean, I've got a turntable, just saying.